This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage.
Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with another edition of Around the Oval, brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. In today's episode, it's going to be a little defensive line themed, and to talk about 2022 recruiting as well as 2023 recruiting, we bring on our own Marc Givler. Marc, appreciate you joining the show as always. How's it going?
Going well. We got a lot to talk about, I think, here with this theme and just moving forward with 23.
Absolutely. And we'll start with the 2022 guys. As I said, two guys, I guess you could call it on the board. One guy, Omari Abor, is committed, but signing day being next week. Is he actually going to sign with Ohio State? Is he, or did he take other visits? I think ever since he announced his commitment at the All-American game a few weeks back, there has been some skepticism that he actually signs the letter of intent. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Christen Miller, the defensive tackle from the Atlanta area, undecided, took a couple visits to Ohio State in 2021 from the summer through the fall. And as far as we know, hasn't been on campus in 2022, but you and Kevin were with him a bit in San Antonio. So, talking to him and Ohio State seems like a possibility, but we'll start with Omari Abor. What are you hearing? What do you expect to happen next week when he has to sign a letter of intent?
I think he's going to sign with Ohio State. There's been a lot of smoke there with Texas A&M. That's not happening. I don't know. Maybe Amari's responsible for that smoke. I'm not sure, but everything I've been told is that Texas A&M is not an option, which kind of leaves you with a program like Miami. We've seen strange things happen. We've seen Jaden Woodby. We've been through a lot the last 10, 12 years and covering this and seeing some weird stuff, but there's not another school really that seems to fit the bill for that late flip. Yeah, I mean, Texas would be the more concerning program for me if they were being, mentioned a little more prominently. But it doesn't really seem like there's a school out there that, there's not a Texas or an Alabama getting this prominent mention that, is a school that's been recruiting him for a while. It's kind of these other schools that, are kind of hopping in there now. And it's hard for me to imagine, the relationship he's had with Ohio State for over a year now, not winning out over schools that have gone through coaching changes, and you're trying to get caught up on the fly on a place like Miami. Just doesn't feel like that's going to happen. But again, we've seen weird things happen before, so you always have to keep an open mind. But I think Ohio State's in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I do too. I think if Larry Johnson, if they had decided to move on from Larry Johnson, or he had decided to retire, that would have been something that I would have personally been a little concerned with if I was Ohio State. They obviously would have had a little bit of time to put someone in place and make sure that Omari was comfortable, but that's not the case. And Larry Johnson is at least here through this upcoming season, which I think will absolutely be good enough to get that signature. So I expect him to sign with Ohio State next week too. Now, Christen Miller might be a different story. He's kind of all over the place. I have been on the train of thought that this is going to be Georgia, and it's just twists and turns along the way as long as they're going to take him, that it's going to be Georgia. Now, speaking to a few different people on the Ohio State side of things, I think they all feel like they don't feel like they're out of it. I can tell you that. They certainly feel like there is a possibility he does sign with them next week. But as one person put it to me, the kid may not even know what he's going to be doing at this point, just a week or so out from National Signing Day. So, I'm personally, until I hear some more firm intel, either on the Georgia side that they don't really think it's them, or maybe the Ohio State side that they do think it's them, or vice versa, I'm going to stick with Georgia as my pick. But Marc, where's your head on this one?
Yeah, I'm sticking with Georgia, and maybe I'm just being stubborn here, but I've just never been on the Ohio State bandwagon on this one. And so maybe I'm stubbornly just hanging on to that thought. But he's giving them reason to think they have a chance, though. I mean, again, this is not someone that, you're quietly hearing, oh, it's over or anything like that. But I go back to Georgia. I think they have room. I haven't heard that would be a game changer for me, obviously, if it came out that maybe Georgia filled up. But believe it or not, it seems like even with all the guys they've kind of got lined up, that he's going to have a spot there. And I think he's tight with a lot of those guys. And I don't think the Larry Johnson retirement stuff has helped the last, month or two, because I think even though it certainly is, looking though Larry Johnson's going to be here at least through the next season, it did seem to cast some doubt that Larry Johnson would be in Columbus beyond the 2022 season. And if you're Kristen Miller, are you going to trust that, either Larry Johnson's going to be there for 3 or 4 years for you, or that, you're going to be trusting Ohio State to replace him at some point during your career, early in your development to boot. So I think that stuff probably hasn't helped them. But I think Georgia, having space, obviously, and just his relationships with some of those guys, Mike Williams, some of those other guys, I think is going to win out. But if anyone were to totally shock us and have him go to Oregon or something on signing day, it would be Kristen Miller. I mean, this would be a kid to surprise. So these are the types of kids you kind of look bad on when you're trying to predict.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I for the only time I ever had Ohio State was maybe before we knew the kid's personality, and he came up to that Ohio State camp. I think it was twice in like a week span or something like that in the beginning of June. And we all kind of thought after that, oh, maybe it's going to be Ohio State. And then we quickly became USC, and then it was going to be Georgia. And then it was, who knows who it was going to be. And now, we'll finally find out. But that was maybe the only week where I thought it was going to be Ohio State during this thing. You brought up interesting points about Larry Johnson. You have one kid who I think in Omari Abor who probably will sign with Ohio State because Larry Johnson's at least staying one more year. And then you bring up Kristen Miller, who, even if he had a guarantee Larry Johnson was staying 5 more years, I don't know if that necessarily would mean he would sign with Ohio State. But you're bringing up a point that, because the uncertainty beyond this year, it doesn't bode well for Ohio State, or doesn't give them a built-in advantage of any sort. Maybe it's a disadvantage. So let's talk about Larry Johnson for a second before we dive into 2023. I mean, I think it's great that he's back. Obviously one of the best, if not the best, defensive line coaches in the college game, not just now, but of all time. Very well respected, has obviously developed a number of guys who have gone on to have great college and NFL careers. But, for now, at least a handful of years now, there's been rumors probably spread by opposing teams trying to get recruits that Larry's going to be retiring. I do think this year, from some of the stuff we heard, there was actually a hard thought about it. And I think for the first time, I felt that it was a very strong possibility, which, does that mean he's definitely going to retire after this year? I don't know. It does not mean that. I mean, he could have a year and feel energized and still young and want to keep going. He's earned the opportunity to be able to call it quits when he wants to call it quits. But at some point when he does call it quits, it's going to affect Ohio State recruiting in some capacity, because he's not the type of guy, in my opinion, who's going to tell these guys he's coming back, have them sign their letters of intent, and then just retire the next day, kind of pull a Stan Drayton on Mike Weber in 2015 or whatever class that was. I think he's the type of guy who will want to be upfront. And, with the portal now and the free one-time transfer, you don't really signing the letter of intent. I mean, yes, it matters. You still have to get out of it and things like that, but you could kind of just go if you wanted to without penalty. So I think this year I'm seeing early on, and we saw it, I think we saw it toward the end of the 2020, they didn't have that many defensive linemen signed until the end of the cycle, really, generally speaking, when it came to 2022. So for 2023, I mean, I'm either seeing, and just talking to some of these kids, situations where guys are kind of let's wait and see kind of the vibe we get a little bit closer to the season. And as the season's going on with Coach Jay, or, hey, yeah, if Ohio State's the place for me, maybe I'm willing to commit. But if Larry Johnson retires, I might need to revisit that. So I think it's tricky. As I said, at some point they're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. A lot of fans on our board are kind of, I think, a little upset that maybe Ohio State didn't address it publicly last year. I personally think they just didn't know what was going. They didn't know a definitive, whether it was Ryan's decision or Larry's decision. I don't think they knew necessarily what was going on, what was going to happen. So it's hard to come out and just address that publicly one way or the other, the kind of the way Tony Alford did on Twitter at some point. I think they addressed it to who they needed to, but I think fans are kind of worried that there's no, I talked to AJ Hoffler and he basically said that what they told him is, as of now, Coach J's here and we don't see that changing. That's all we can tell you basically. And I think fans are a little, not that they have the right to be, but a little irked to some extent that there's no solid plan to discuss that when they know it's going to be such a hot topic when it comes to defensive line recruiting. So I guess, Mark, what's your POV? How could Ohio State address this? How should they address this? It's a tough situation to be in, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they're in a tough spot because, I thought they maybe would bring in kind of a co-D line coach or a defensive tackles coach or something like that this offseason. It feels like Parker Fleming is going to stay in one of the 10 assistant coach roles. So if that's the case, they obviously won't be doing that. That was one alternative. The other thing you can do if you're Ohio State, and I don't know how you massage this with recruits, so you really can't, but is to kind of spend the next 6 to 8 months lining up your next guy so that if Larry Johnson does decide to retire after the season, and maybe he would give them a bit of a heads up on that, and they could get the ball rolling on replacing him, at least behind the scenes, but then you're going to have to explain that to recruits. So I don't know how you do this. And I think you made a good point earlier. I think this is the first time that this last month or two is the first time I've put stock into the Larry Johnson retirement stuff. I knew a couple of years ago when this stuff started, a few years ago, it's been going on for probably 4 or 5 years now. There was no intention for Larry Johnson to retire. He was telling, Zach Harrison and guys like that he's going to see him through at Ohio State. And Larry's not the type of guy who would just say that and then, bolt and not, in 6 months or something like that. So, he's been saying this. I don't know that he's saying this now, though. I don't know that a lot of recruits are getting the, I'll be there for 3 or 4 years pitch from Larry Johnson. So there are signals out there that maybe this is in the final year or two. But until it happens, there's not much you can do. And other schools deal with this. You lose assistant coaches. You lose assistant coaches every year, really. And you just got to go hire a really good coach to replace them. And that guy's going to have his own strengths and weaknesses and territories he does well in. And you're just going to have to rely on that. I don't know. Outside of going coach and waiting, and like, again, taking Parker Fleming or someone like that off of there and kind of evening up the staff 5 and 5, I don't know how else you would address this.
Yeah, I thought they were, Jim Knowles, I know, has used the 2 D-line coach system. Forget about any successor, things like that. So, we thought, and we were hearing even, I think if Al Washington stayed on staff, that probably would have been the role he played. So I don't know if it was, well, if Al's not staying, we're not going to use that spot or a spot for a second D-line coach. I don't know if it was just Al or nothing for that, but that was absolutely a possibility. I guess they technically could make a move for Parker Fleming after signing day, although it's not like any recruits are tied to him. So there would be no reason to really wait there. The only reason for Ohio State to wait at this point would be, either a coach they're hiring in college wants to wait until after they promised their coach they would wait until after signing day to move, or there's an NFL coach for one of the 4 teams remaining that Ryan Day is looking to bring in. So that would be the only things. But look, Al Washington and Kerry Combs were out recruiting right before they kind of got shown the door or whatever, didn't come back. So, Parker Fleming's been out recruiting. Maybe there is a plan to kind of to move him in either into a different role, off the field coaching role, or he's moving on. But I tend to agree with you, Mark. I think that they're going to kind of stand pat with what they got. And so I don't know. I don't know what you do. I think you just kind of ride this out. And if this is going to be Larry's last season and he decides that toward the end of the year, you ask him to let you know as early as possible. I don't know if it's better to get that out as early as possible and announce a successor so you could try to salvage a class, or it's better to wait till the early guys sign and then announce it. That's a tough call, but I think you gotta know his intentions at least as early as possible and then be able to make a decision from there. So that's what I'll say on that. But I certainly do not envy Ryan Day and Larry Johnson and the things they're going to have to combat in recruiting the defensive line this year. And speaking of that, this cycle, Will Smith is in the class. I like that commitment. I think Bank put it great the other day. Tressel would have taken Will Smith Jr. in 2 seconds. Urban probably would have never taken him. But I think he's just got, everyone always says you want guys who want to be Buckeyes, you want to take Ohio kids. I just think this kid with everything he's gone through and just how he's developed as a player, I think he's going to be a player for Ohio State, at least a contributor. So I think it's a good move, but they're going to probably fill anywhere from 3 to 5 other spots in this defensive line class. And so we're going to play a little game. I've got 12 guys across the defensive line that Ohio State's in on, and we're going to play. And let's assume it's not a yes, but then if Larry Johnson retires, it's a no. We're going to play yes, no, maybe, or yes, maybe, no, on if you think they will be in the class, assuming all things currently, stand as they currently are. So first guy we're going to talk about is a guy out from California, Mateo Uiagalelei, brother of DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson, defensive end out at St. John Bosco. What do you got, Mark?
Yeah, you just handcuffed me there with the Larry Johnson stuff. I think Ohio State leads right now. I'm going to break the rule and say, I think a lot of that is Larry Johnson. So, stay tuned, but I would say somewhere between maybe and yes on that. I think his best visit was a visit he took to Ohio State in the summer. And I think Mom's on board with Ohio State, and Mom's kind of calling the shots on this one. So I don't think he's going to Clemson. Lincoln Riley at USC makes things very interesting for all California prospects out there now. He'll get that nice little honeymoon here the next 12 months. But I would say maybe plus on that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually think something people don't know actually about this recruitment. The family is very close with Monica Johnson and Paris Johnson. Paris and DJ got to know each other, I think, pretty well, going on a number of visits and things like that, and just being a part of the whole, 5-star recruiting scene in the same cycle. So they got pretty close. They hung out a bit when they were in Columbus over the summer. Oh, I'm going to go maybe, just because there's so many factors at play here. Even if Larry Johnson is definitely back, I just think that there's a lot of factors at play. So I'll go maybe. Another kid from out west, I think he's playing in Utah now, but originally from Hawaii, Tausili Akana earned an offer. What do you got, Mark?
I'm going to say no, but it is interesting that he came all the way to Ohio State for camp in the summer. But that just, I don't know, something about that. It just doesn't really fit the profile of the traditional guy that Ohio State's able to land. Gosh, I know they've they got Enoch out of Hawaii a couple of years ago, and Devin Brown was a kind of a transplant into Utah this year, and Tommy Togiai, but I don't know. It just, I talked to him at camp, and I got the sense that it was a visit he wanted to take because of Ohio State's prestige and Larry Johnson and things like that, but I didn't get that feeling from him that this was like a dream offer type of thing for him. And I have actually been told to kind of watch out for Alabama with him If Nick Saban kind of decides in like August who he wants. So I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But I have been kind of told to watch Alabama there.
It's funny you said that. I was gonna say no. This feels like a kid Alabama gets to me, but yeah, I'm gonna go no. Very simply. Next one, another guy who came to camp for an offer this summer was Gabriel Harris out of Florida, was committed to Florida State at the time. Ohio State basically told him decommit from Florida State and you'll have an offer. And a few days later, that's what happened. So what do you got, Mark? Gabe Harris.
Yeah, I'll say maybe. Guys from that part of the country, those can be adventures that really aren't over until at least the December early signing period. So I think there's a long way to go there. I think they liked him. I think there's a couple questions there. Can he play end? Is he a guy with, they're gonna have to move inside? But yeah, I would give them a shot there.
I'm gonna say maybe as well. I know that they like him. Obviously, they had him in camp. They offered, but I think they're still kind of working on how their board goes. So I think it's going to be a long journey for him. And I think them just trying to figure out, where does he stack up on their board? I think I'll go maybe. Next guy I have a hunch how we're both going to go is Lebbeus Overton, possible number one player in the class, maybe. What do you got?
No. SEC. Somewhere, Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah, SEC. Ole Miss, Texas A&M.
They're getting everybody, so you might as well just put Texas A&M on for every 5-star defensive lineman these days.
Yeah, and this is a guy you probably have a better vibe on than me. David DJ Hicks from Texas. Thought he had a good visit. Thought Ohio State looked to be where they needed to be coming out of summer, but I don't remember correctly, but I don't think they got a fall visit, which I thought that they could have used, and they certainly can use one this winter or maybe in the spring if they want to stay in this one. But what are you thinking with David Hicks?
Yeah, I'm gonna say no, and maybe it's I said maybe plus at the beginning there. Maybe this should be maybe minus, but it was interesting. I talked to his dad quite a bit while he was up here, and it was like Larry Johnson was the reason. And so some people might find that to be positive. The vibe I got is that if there's any question of Larry Johnson being there for 3 years, that's not going to be a thing for them. It was more Larry Johnson, because when I asked Dad, I kind of asked all these guys, what are you doing all the way up here? And it was just opportunity to work with Larry Johnson for a day. And I just don't know that that's going to hold up. I tend to think when push comes to shove, he's going to stay down in that part of the country, and one of the Texas schools or an LSU or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm no on that one. How about halfway through point, Derek LeBlanc?
God, I would have said yes for so long. I'm going to say maybe now. The Will Smith Jr. commitment's interesting to me because I think they are similar guys that they're a little undersized right now to play inside, but I think everyone thinks that's probably their future. And I don't know. To me, I think if Derek was getting the full court press to commit right now, I think he probably already would have. And so the fact that they have let Will Smith Jr. commit, I think puts Derek in a situation where maybe they want to go down and see him in the spring and kind of see where his body is at.
Yeah, I've heard there's some mixed opinions on him in the Woody. Is he a tweener? Is he as good as his ranking is? I think there's a lot of questions there. And I agree with you. If he had the full court press, he'd be a Buckeye right now. I don't think he's gotten that. And I personally don't think he's gonna. I'm actually gonna go no. Not even maybe. I mean, I guess I could change my opinion there. From what I know now, I would bet he ends up somewhere else. So on the flip side, Amari Washington out of Arizona. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm gonna say maybe. And again, that's probably a maybe plus. I think that was we start talking about like dream offers. I think that was kind of a dream offer for him. I still am a little skittish about guys that far away. And again, I think they're going to need defensive tackles, which I think is beneficial there. I think they're going to have to take 3, even if they get Christen Miller, maybe you could get away with 2, but I think it's a 3 defensive tackle class. So I think he's in pretty good standing. So I'm going to say maybe, but on the plus side of maybe.
Yeah, I'll go with yes for now. I think I know there's relationship with Keon Grays a little bit, and I think Devin Brown also told me that he had said something to him when he got offered. So there is a little bit of an Arizona connection. I know Devin played in Utah, but he's from Arizona. So I'm going to go yes. I think right now, as things stand, I'll go yes. I think he ends up in the class. A guy I just can't get a read on personally is Keith Sampson from North Carolina. I'll start. I'll just go maybe. I don't know how they feel about him. I know he's in their top, where Ohio State's in his top group, but I just don't know how that one's going to end. If I had to guess gun to my head, I'd probably say no, but I'll go maybe because I know they're certainly in the game. What are your thoughts?
This might be my surprise pick. I'm going to say yes. I think if they're not leading right now, they're definitely top 2. Ryan Day was just at his school this past week. And that's not, he's not like in Charlotte. He's like out there in like the Outer Banks somewhere, like on an island or something, like in a peninsula or something. That is not, I mapped that out because we're looking at that for Southern Swing. And I'm like, holy God, that's way out there. It's like you go like, we thought Zamir White was kind of out off the beaten path. This is out there. So I think they like him quite a bit. I don't know if he's the top. I don't think the top guy though. So it's hard to say. Is he their top guy? I don't know. I don't think they're at that point yet. I think Jim Knowles is going to have a say in that. And I know Larry Johnson kind of controls his room, but I also think Jim Knowles is going to be able to look at some film here the next few weeks and get his input in there as well for what he's looking for his defense. But I've been hearing really good things that there are people in the Woody that really like him. I know they liked his camp performance back in June. So again, coming from off the beaten path, coming up to visit, he's told me he's going to visit probably this spring, probably like March, probably for a spring practice type thing. So if that happens, I would put them in the tough to beat category actually for Keith. I think this could be the surprise guy that, I'm not saying no one's talking about him, but I just don't know that everyone's, I don't think there's any crystal balls in for him or anything like that. I'm going to gamble a little bit on that one and say yes.
A few more. John Walker out of Florida, been up a couple times on his own dime.
I'm going to say no, because I don't you need LeBlanc? Do you need LeBlanc to get Walker? Maybe you don't, but I just haven't felt that one. I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I'm with you. No. AJ Hoffler just visited this past weekend. We covered his visit and thoughts on that in, at least in my A deck, probably a few other places on the site. What do you think, Mark?
You're probably gonna have a better answer for this than I will, but everything I've seen says yes, but I don't know if they're necessarily gonna, is he LeBlanc? Is he a tweener? Do they know where he fits? But my instinct is to say yes. I'm at least at a maybe plus, but I'll just say yes. I'll just take a shot there.
Yeah, I'll say yes. The one thing I'm like, they didn't really not that they needed to squeeze him for a commitment now, but they didn't really push for one either. They kind of gave him the yeah, take your time. We're here. And he's planning, I think his birthday, August 9th. I think that's what August 9th is. He's planning to commit then. He said it could be before then. He's definitely going to take visits in the spring and summer, official visits. So I expect Ohio State to get one of those. So I think this could work out in the sense to your point of like Ohio State can evaluate a little bit more and just make sure he's the right guy and they have time to do that, bring him in on an official visit, see how he fits in and all that. He's been up twice in the last few months on his own dime. So obviously very serious interest there. I do think this is one, I know we said we wouldn't say this, but I do think this is one where LJ's future could play into it. So I will go with yes, but watching this one. Last two guys are athletes who I'm just going to say they're defensive ends, but I just, I don't know. They could be anything. First is a kid from IMG, Sam Pemba. Just got an offer recently. He's kind of like a linebacker body maybe right now, but could see him definitely growing into an edge rusher. Any thoughts on him or too early for you to kind of get a read on this one?
Yeah, I'll just say maybe I'll take the coward's way out just because I'm still kind of figuring that one out. I know people are kind of talking about a disconnect with IMG. I don't know if I would necessarily go that direction. I don't know that there's a disconnect there. I think it's a tough place to recruit. And I think Alabama got their hooks in on some of the offensive linemen. So it's, every year they have this monster offensive tackle and his big brother is at Alabama, from Neal and Latham and all those guys and now Booker. So I think there are some situations. Yes, Alabama's, well thought of there. Alabama's probably well thought of every program in the country. So I'm not buying into the IMG voodoo or anything like that. I'm just, I just think it's a little bit early to go any higher than maybe on that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just too early for me. I don't know much about the kid and where he stand. I think it's interesting you mentioned IMG because there is that vibe out there right now. And it's funny because Pepper Johnson's the head coach and he's a Buckeye. So you would think, if anything, it would be good for Ohio State. And I don't personally think that there's like a anti-Ohio State or anything fishy going on there. I think it is what it is. Those are just really high level players and it's going to be really competitive to get them. I think that I have heard that there are some, I don't know. I don't want to try to word this correctly. I don't know. Just the way it's being run right now is definitely maybe not the way it's been run under some past coaches and things like that, past administration. So that could be something to watch. You've had a lot of guys come in and out of there and just some things I'm hearing from various coaches that it's a little bit of a mess to some extent. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays into it, but interesting. The last guy out of the Washington, D.C. area, an absolute freak of an athlete, Nichols Harbor, legitimately like an Olympic level track and field kid at 6'5", 225 pounds. Again, is he a defensive end? Is he a linebacker? Is he a Isaiah Simmons? Like, I don't know what he is. You look at the frame and if he dedicates himself to football in the weight room, he's at least someone who I see playing at, 6'5", 240. And with his speed, I mean, you got to just, to me, use that to get to the quarterback. So I'm going to say no. I don't know. I'm not feeling this one right now. Mark, we'll let you close out the show with your prediction there.
Yeah, I mean, my instinct is probably not, but I'll bump it up to maybe just because I don't think you count Larry Johnson out in that part of the country. The kid fits the profile of what they want. They love those track guys, and you hard sell Chase Young. You hard sell Chase Young, and maybe Chase Young is magically in the stadium if you get him on campus for a visit, and Chase Young's magically there doing the game ball or something. But that would be my play. But maybe minus or something like that. But I'll give him a puncher's chance.
Yeah, and if Zach Harrison had. And he still could, but if he had panned out the way we all thought he would by the end of year 3, that probably would have been the closest thing to this type of athlete that Harbor is. So, maybe you still use that to some extent and just show how he could develop at least his body But yeah, Mark, appreciate you joining the show. It's going to be interesting to see how the next week unfolds when it comes to the 2022 guys, Omari Abor, Christian Miller. Be sure to stay tuned to Buckeye Scoop. We'll have full coverage of the second signing period. Hopefully it is good news for Ohio State. And then, throughout the year, be sure to stay tuned to us. We'll certainly keep you posted as 2023 defensive line recruiting unfolds. Thanks again, Mark. Thanks everyone for listening. We will see you next week.
This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.